Hello, my friends. Welcome back to English with Shadowing, the podcast, the place where we don't just learn English, we live it. Here, you will practice real English the right way, slowly, clearly, and with confidence. In each episode, you'll listen, repeat, and connect English to your daily life. No fast talking, no long grammar rules, just real phrases, real examples, and real progress. We use a powerful method called shadowing. That means you hear a sentence, and then you speak it out loud with me. Just like singing along to a song, you train your brain and your mouth at the same time. It builds your fluency, your memory, and your speaking rhythm, naturally. Now, get ready, relax your mind, and let's grow your English. One sentence at a time. A long time ago, in a small town surrounded by mountains and forests, there lived a boy named Ethan. He was 15 years old, with curious eyes and a quiet heart. Ethan lived with his grandfather in a little bookshop at the corner of Maple Street. The bookshop was old, with creaky floors and shelves full of dusty books that smelled of time and secrets. Most days were calm and simple. Ethan helped his grandfather arrange books, swept the floor, and made tea in the afternoon. They didn't have much, but they had enough. Life was peaceful, until one rainy morning in November. The day started like any other. Ethan opened the shop at 9, wiped the windows, and placed a few books outside on the wooden display. The rain tapped gently on the roof. It was quiet until the doorbell rang. Ding-a-ling! A stranger stood at the door. He wore a long black coat and held a leather bag. His face was tired, and his hands trembled slightly. Without a word, he walked up to the counter, took out an envelope, and placed it in front of Ethan. "This is for your grandfather," he said in a deep voice. Then he turned and walked out into the rain. Ethan stood still, holding the envelope. It was old and yellow, sealed with dark red wax. On the back, a strange symbol was pressed into the wax, a raven with a key in its beak. He took it to his grandfather, who was sitting by the fireplace reading a book. When the old man saw the envelope, his hands froze. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "A man gave it to me. He said it's for you." His grandfather slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, written in handwriting that looked old and elegant. As he read, his eyes grew wide. Then he stood up and said just 2 words, "It's time." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the letter. What did it say? Why did it scare his grandfather so much? At midnight, he heard soft footsteps. Quietly, he followed them down the stairs. His grandfather was in the back room, opening a small wooden chest. Inside were old photos, maps, and one small, rusted key. His grandfather looked at Ethan and said, "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." Ethan sat down, heart beating fast. His grandfather took a deep breath. "When I was your age, I lived in a place called Ravenwood. It was a great house, hidden deep in the forest. But something happened there, something terrible, and I never went back." Ethan stared at him. "What happened?" His grandfather looked into the fire. "We lost something. Something powerful. And now someone wants it back." The next morning the old man handed Ethan a map. "This is Ravenwood, and you must go." Ethan's eyes widened. "Me? But why?" "Because the letter was not just for me. It was for you too. You have the heart. You have the courage. And Ravenwood is calling you." And so, with a small backpack, a flashlight, and the old key, Ethan left the quiet bookshop behind. He followed the map, walking deep into the forest. The trees grew taller. The light grew dimmer. Birds stopped singing. The wind whispered between the branches. After 3 hours, Ethan found an old gate made of iron and vines. Behind it stood a giant house, covered in moss and shadow. Its windows were broken. The front door stood half open, and on the wall above the entrance, carved in stone, was the symbol of the raven with a key. He stepped inside. Ethan stood in the doorway of the old house. The air inside was cold and still. Dust floated like snowflakes in the light, coming through the broken windows. The floor creaked under his feet as he stepped inside. He looked around. The walls were covered with dark wooden panels. There was a large staircase in the center, leading up to the second floor. Everything smelled of age, of time long forgotten. He whispered to himself, "This is Ravenwood." He held the old key in his hand. His grandfather said it would open something important. But what? He started walking through the main hall. Paintings hung on the walls, portraits of people from long ago. One painting showed a young girl holding a black bird. Another showed a man with eyes like fire. Their faces seemed to follow Ethan as he moved. He entered a room to the left. It was a library. Hundreds of books lined the shelves, but many had fallen to the floor. A large wooden desk stood near the window. On it was a dusty notebook. Ethan wiped the cover and opened it. The first page said, "Ravenwood Journal, property of Margaret Holloway, 1913. He turned the pages carefully. They were full of drawings, maps, codes, symbols. One page had a sketch of the raven symbol. Underneath it read, "The key is not just to unlock, it awakens." Ethan didn't understand what that meant, but he knew the key in his pocket was special. Suddenly, a noise came from upstairs. Thump, then silence. His heart jumped. He stood still, listening. Thump. Someone, or something, was up there. Slowly, he walked back to the staircase. Each step creaked louder than the last. The second floor was darker. Curtains covered the windows, and the hallway stretched long and narrow. There were many doors, some open, some closed. He opened the first door. It was a bedroom. The bed was covered in a white sheet. The mirror was cracked. On the wall, someone had written something in red chalk. "He watches, he waits." Ethan felt a chill down his spine. He closed the door and moved to the next room. It was a study. There were papers scattered everywhere. In the corner stood a tall grandfather clock. It was not working, but it pointed to 3:15. Ethan noticed a small box sitting on the chair beside the window. It had a keyhole. He tried the key. Click. The box opened. Inside was a small brass whistle and a note. The note said, "When the wind comes from the east, blow once. When the shadow moves, blow twice. Then listen." What did it mean? Suddenly, Ethan heard the noise again. This time, it came from behind him. He turned fast, but no one was there. He continued down the hallway. At the very end, there was a door with strange symbols carved into the wood. The raven symbol was in the center. Ethan reached for the doorknob, but it was cold, colder than the air. He opened the door slowly. Inside was a round room with stone walls. There were no windows, only candle holders along the walls, though all were empty. In the center of the floor, there was a circular stone plate, and on it, The raven with the key was carved again. He stepped forward. As soon as he touched the stone, the brass whistle in his pocket became warm. He remembered the note, "When the wind comes from the east," but there was no wind here. Then he noticed something. A small hole in the wall let in a breeze. He took out the compass from his bag. The wind was indeed coming from the east. He blew the whistle once. Nothing happened. Then he looked at the floor and gasped. The shadow of the raven carving moved, though nothing else did. He blew the whistle a second time. Suddenly, a deep rumbling sound filled the room. The stone floor began to shift. The carving moved aside, revealing a staircase that led downward into darkness. Ethan took a deep breath. He turned on his flashlight. Step by step, he descended. The air grew colder. The walls were made of stone. Strange symbols lined the passage. Then, at the bottom, he found a hidden chamber. Inside were books, boxes, and old machines. On one wall hung a large map with notes written in red ink, but something else caught his eye. In the center of the room was a glass case. Inside it was an object, round, black, with glowing red lines. It looked like a compass, but unlike anything he had seen before. It pulsed softly, like it was alive. There was a note next to it. The Heart of Ravenwood. Do not touch unless you are ready. Before Ethan could decide what to do, a loud bang came from upstairs. Then voices. More than one. He wasn't alone. He turned off the flashlight and stood still in the dark, holding his breath. Ethan stood in the darkness, deep beneath the old house. The only sound was his heartbeat, fast and loud. Above him, heavy footsteps moved across the wooden floor. More than one person was upstairs, and they were not friendly. He crouched low, hiding behind a tall stack of wooden crates in the hidden chamber. The strange compass, the Heart of Ravenwood, still glowed inside the glass case, pulsing with a soft red light. He stared at it, remembering the warning, "Do not touch unless you are ready." But what did that mean? The footsteps grew louder. Then, silence. A voice echoed from the staircase above. "He's been here. The seal is broken." Another voice, deeper and calmer, replied, "Then we are too late." He found the chamber first. Ethan held his breath. He didn't recognize the voices. One of them walked slowly down the stairs. The glow from their flashlight lit up the tunnel. Ethan ducked lower. The man stepped into the chamber. He wore a long coat and dark gloves. His face was hidden behind a mask. He stopped in front of the glass case, staring at the Heart of Ravenwood. "So, it's true. The artifact is real." Then he turned to look around the room. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The man pulled something from his coat. It was a small silver device like a scanner. He held it over the case. A soft beep filled the silence. "Still active," he muttered. "We must take it tonight." Suddenly, another voice shouted from upstairs. "Footprints! Someone was here. Not long ago." The man in the mask looked toward the tunnel. "Search the grounds. He may still be close." Ethan didn't wait. Quietly, he moved deeper into the chamber, crawling behind an old bookshelf. There was a second exit, a narrow tunnel at the far end of the room. He slipped inside, hoping it would lead somewhere safe. The tunnel was tight and cold. He moved on hands and knees. The air smelled of earth and metal. After several minutes, he saw a faint light ahead. He reached the end and pushed open a small wooden door. It creaked softly. He stepped into an old greenhouse behind the house. Plants had long died, The glass was cracked, but it was quiet. For now, he ran through the garden, past overgrown roses and stone statues covered in moss. He reached the forest and hid behind a tree. His hands were shaking. His heart was racing. Who were those men? How did they know about the heart? What do they want with it? He remembered his grandfather's words. We lost something powerful, and now someone wants it back. Ethan knew he couldn't leave now. Not yet. The next morning, Ethan returned to the house just before sunrise. He moved carefully, watching for signs of the strangers. But they were gone. Only muddy footprints and broken branches remained. He entered through the back and checked the chamber. The heart of Ravenwood was still there, but the scanner device the masked man used was lying on the floor. Ethan picked it up. It was cold, metallic, and had buttons labeled with strange symbols. He pressed one. Bzzz! A small blue light appeared on the side. Then something even stranger happened. The compass inside the glass case responded. It flashed once, then twice. Ethan stepped back. Suddenly, he heard a voice, soft, electronic, coming from the device in his hand. Target confirmed. Activation level. Unstable. He dropped it. The light faded. Everything went silent again. Ethan returned to the library upstairs. He opened Margaret Holloway's journal again. He flipped through the pages, searching for answers. Finally, on page 42, he found something new. The artifact is linked to the Raven's code. When the compass pulses, the guardian is near. The code must not fall into wrong hands. What was the Raven's code? Who was the guardian? Just then, a noise came from the hallway. Ethan jumped, hiding the journal under his jacket. But it wasn't a stranger. It was someone he never expected to see. A girl, about his age. Brown jacket, messy ponytail, holding a small backpack. Her face looked just as surprised. "You're not one of them," she said. "Neither are you," Ethan replied. "Good. I thought I was the only one left." Her name was Ava. She had come to Ravenwood 2 days ago, following clues from her grandmother, who, it turned out, had also lived at the house many years ago. "I've been watching the place for weeks," Ava said. "Then last night, I saw those men break in. I was hiding in the attic." Ethan told her about the compass, the chamber, and the voices. Ava nodded. "They're after the same thing I am." "What is it?" Ethan asked. "The heart of Ravenwood," she said. "But it's more than a compass. It's a key." "A key to what?" She looked at him with serious eyes. "To the vault." Ethan blinked. "There's more?" Ava pulled out a torn page from an old letter. On it were the words, "The heart unlocks the vault only when bloodlines unite." She looked at him closely. "Your name is Ethan. What's your last name?" "Holloway?" Her eyes widened. "Then it's true. Our families were meant to protect it. Together." The old house stood silent under the gray morning sky. Clouds rolled above like waves of smoke. Inside Ravenwood, 2 young strangers, Ethan and Ava, stood together for the first time, their hands trembling, their minds racing. The moment had come. They sat in the library, surrounded by torn books and broken shelves. Between them lay the journal, the map, and the ancient compass. The heart of Ravenwood. It still pulsed with a soft red glow. "So it's true," Ethan said. "Our families were the guardians." "And now it's our turn," Ava replied. She showed him the torn page again. "The heart unlocks the vault only when bloodlines unite." That meant one thing. They had to work together. The journal mentioned a secret entrance beneath the mountain where the raven's shadow falls. There was a mountain just west of Ravenwood. At sunset, its shadow touched a nearby hill. That was their destination. They packed quickly: a flashlight, rope, the compass, and a copy of the journal. The scanner device, too. It might still work. Just before leaving, Ethan wrote a short note for his grandfather. "I found it. The stories were true. I'll return." By late afternoon, they reached the base of the mountain. It was steep and covered in dark pine trees. The air smelled of moss and wet stone. They followed the path marked on the map, climbing slowly until they reached the hill mentioned in the journal. As the sun began to set, the mountain's shadow stretched across the ground. It fell directly onto a flat rock near a dead tree. There, carved into the stone, was the raven with the key. "This is it," Ava said. They placed the compass in the center of the carving. Suddenly, the wind picked up. The compass pulsed faster. The scanner in Ethan's pocket beeped twice. Then, crack. The stone split down the middle, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. They descended carefully, each step echoing like thunder in the silence. The air grew cold. The walls were smooth, black stone, with strange glowing patterns like veins of red fire. It didn't feel like a cave. It felt made. At the bottom, they entered a round chamber, bigger than the one under the house. The ceiling was high, covered with star-like lights. In the center was a pedestal, and on it a large metal door with no handle. No keyhole, just a perfect circle. The compass glowed brightly. Ava held it up. A low hum filled the room. The circle on the door lit up in red, matching the compass's glow. Slowly, the metal door began to rotate, then slide open with a heavy groan. Inside was a room unlike anything they had ever seen. The vault. It was filled with books, machines, and strange glass orbs that floated in the air. Some showed moving images, maps, stars, faces. Others glowed gently, like they were alive. But in the center of the room stood something even more powerful. A tall pillar of crystal, spinning slowly, covered in markings. Around it floated symbols, languages, pieces of forgotten knowledge. "This isn't just treasure," Ethan whispered. "It's everything." Ava nodded. Ravenwood wasn't guarding gold. It was guarding memory, truth, knowledge. Suddenly, the symbols began to move, faster, brighter. The crystal responded to the presence of their bloodlines. "It's waking up," Ava said. Just then, boom! The sound of footsteps. They had been followed. The masked man from before entered, followed by two others. "Thank you for opening the door," he said coldly. He held a strange black device, shaped like a weapon. "Step aside. The vault belongs to us now." Ethan stepped in front of Ava. "You don't know what this place is." "I know enough," the man snapped. "Power, hidden for generations. We will decide who gets to use it now." He raised the device. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the light faded. The room calmed. The vault was safe, because of them. Hours later, they climbed back to the surface. The stars were out. The wind was soft. The forest was quiet again. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. At the top of the hill, they looked back toward Ravenwood. It still stood, proud and silent, like it had for 100 years. "So, what now?" Ethan asked. Ava smiled. "Now, we go home. And then, we protect the story." "Together?" he asked. She nodded. "Always." And that's it for today's practice. You didn't just listen, you spoke, you felt, and you connected with real English. If you enjoyed this session, don't forget to come back tomorrow. We'll have more powerful words, real-life sentences, and simple steps to help you speak English fluently and naturally. Remember, the more you listen, the more you repeat, the more you live with English, the more confident you become. So keep going. You're doing great. And I'll see you again in the next episode, right here on English with Shadowing, the podcast. Until then, keep speaking, keep learning, keep believing.